In this lecture, continuation of the lecture number 3, it's the lecture number 4, and in this particular lecture we learn the critical path method, which is known as the CPM, and use some more example to construct the network analysis and how can I find the critical path. The first one is why we study the critical path and what is the meaning of the critical path. Here we mention every line. Here the critical path analysis is a special application of network analysis. It uses network analysis for scheduling, production, construction, project, as well as the research and development activities. Beside this, it is used in a certain other situation that require the estimate of the time and the performance. It's which is critical activity. So when we analyze the network analysis and find the critical path, in that case you can recognize how many time required to complete the project, and if you can find the critical path, you can also define that if the project is not completed in the certain duration, where it's the delay procedure occur. You can easily observe when you solve a problem, and I should discuss in the different example where the effectiveness of the critical path. So in the next slide, we move to the next slide where critical path. What is critical path? The continuation of this. The critical path is overall time it will take to complete the project, and it is the longest path in the time through the network. What is the meaning of longest path? Now, how much maximum time you give for a particular project or some production or some construction and so on. So you should not concentrate in this particular line, because I'm not solving the problem of critical path of the previous diagram. When we move to find the critical path using the previous diagram, then you can recognize the result here, and I'm not mentioning, you should not watch this particular line of this particular lecture. So move to the next slide. You have to recognize the next one is why critical path is important to management. Because any delay along with this path will postpone the final completion date of the project. That means when we start our lecture, we just mention a particular example of construction of a building according to your duration. You should remember this concept is that if you are a government service holder and you going to retired in 2020 December, your goal is to complete your building within 2020 December, but sometimes it should not be happen that you cannot complete your construction within the certain duration. When you find the critical part, in that case you can recognize why we cannot complete and what's the reason where and which particular job is delayed for the completion of completion of the project. You can recognize using the critical path method. Spot the potential bottleneck early. অনেক আগেই তুমি ধরে ফেলতে পারবে where the potential bottleneck is not the case, and avoid unnecessary pressure on the other path that will not the result in earlier final completion of the date. মানে এরকম হয় আমাদের ক্রিটিক্যাল পাথ বার করলে আমরা জানতে পারবো একটা প্রজেক্টের কোনটা নেসেসারি ওয়ার্ক যেটাকে কমপ্লিট করলে প্রজেক্টটাকে সার্টেন ডিউরেশন গিভেন ডিউরেশনে কমপ্লিট করা যাবে, আর কোন কোন জবগুলোকে অত এমফাসাইজ না দিলেও আমি আমার জবগুলো কমপ্লিট করে ফেলতে পারবো। So you have to recognize the critical activities and the critical path, and which activity is the most vital activity which affect the duration of the project. So it's the last slide. It's the last slide, advantage of the network technique. The advantage of the network technique is its management in the planning, scheduling, and the controlling of the activity of the project. আমরা প্ল্যান করতে পারবো, কন্ট্রোল করতে পারবো কোন অ্যাক্টিভিটি কোথায় কত ডিউরেশন দিয়ে শেষ না করলে কত দেরি হয়ে যেতে পারে। হেল্প ইন অ্যাসার্টিং টাইম শিডিউলস, হেল্প in the guideline and directing team effort more effectively, encourage the discipline, aids in handling the uncertain and regarding time schedule, coordination of the various activities, and the control of the cost of involved. These few are the advantages for the network analysis technique, because if you control your project in certain duration, that means you have to recognize which uh, which job is or which activity is the vital activity. You have to complete this vital activity with a certain time. Exactly for that reason, we should concentrate the valuable or the critical activities of a project. So that's why we study the network analysis and construct the network analysis diagram. So we move to our next valuable network diagram, as well as to find the critical path. Okay, here I give another example of construction of the network diagram. Okay, job predecessor, that means we just mention here along the first column is job, and they are represent the predecessor activity. So if you recognize in the previous lecture, we have already mentioned that when you construct your predecessor, when you construct your network, you have to recognize which activity should be the starting activity. Okay, which activity should be the starting activity. Okay, exactly this. So here we mention 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 and 110. That is the job. Just we mention the node in that particular manner, nothing more. You can also mention it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and so on. So, and the numbering is most important. So here the starting activity is A and B because they haven't any predecessor activity. So we start our drawing from here A. Next we start our drawing here. This one is B. Okay, next you have to recognize when A is A, how many number of activities can start when A can end. This one is a P, that means you have to check the predecessor activity, this one, this one, this one, and there isn't any other. So when we end the activity A, you can start the activity C, you can start the activity D, and you can start the activity F. Exactly for that reason, here we start the activity F, here we start the activity D, here we start the activity D, and another one is the activity, this one is C. Now you start your activity C, D, E, A and B. Next you have to recognize if B and C are the predecessor activity, then you can start the activity E. That means B and C should meet in a certain node. So here we meet B as well as C as well as B in a certain point this, and you can start your activity. Okay, you can start your activity. Next one is A. You have already start this. Next, if is completed, then you can start your activity G. If is completed, then you can start your activity G. D and E is completed, then you can start your activity H. So D already started, E already started. So exactly for that reason, here this started this one and this one meet with a certain point, and we start the activity H. Okay, if F is completed, you can start G. So exactly here we start G. So F is not the any other predecessor activity, so here we mention this. The next one is if G and H is completed, you can start the activity J. Exactly for that reason we meet G and the activity H in a certain point. You can start the activity J. Okay, G. G and H, after completion of G and H, you can start the activity K. Exactly for that reason, and G and H completion, you can start another activity is L. Exactly for that reason, here we start J, here we start K, here we start L. Okay, clear? Here we start L. After completion of JKL, you can start M. Now it's a very important idea is that now you should record the dummy activity, because here end and the tail and the head activity are same. In that case, you have to mention a dummy activity. Exactly for that reason, here we use the dummy activity, and also here we use another dummy activity. Okay, so after completion of this, you can start aim in. Exactly for that reason, here we start the activity aim, and here we start the activity in. Okay, and O, after completion of K and J, you can start the activity O. Clear? So which should be the last activity? If we observe your PDSR activity, A is present here, B, C is present here, D, E, F, G, H is also present here, I is also present there, J, K, L. I is not mentioned in any activities. J, K, L is also present there. Okay, so which activity is not mentioned as a predecessor activity? That is aim. This one is aim, this one is aim, and this one is O. It's represented that should be the end activity. Exactly for that reason, here we end the activity O, aim, and end with a note point, because you can start a activity after completion of this. So here we meet the activity M, N, and O in a certain place, and you can stop your activity here. Here it's another point should mention here, that is the completion of the work is this. That should be the procedure of construction of network diagram. In the next lecture, we will move to find the critical path. Thank you.